Well, for me, it was the animal cruelty. Like I conceptualized violence towards animals about 11 years ago,
Yeah.
and I knew then that like I didn't want to contribute to their pain and suffering anymore.
Right.
Like I've seen videos of like factory farm footage and things like that, and I started to question like our food system. Like, where do we get food? How do we get it?
Yeah.
Where's it grown? And that led me down a rabbit hole of information dealing with factory farming, animal agriculture, and I've seen how destructive it was to the planet, not only the planet, but ourselves, and also the real victims, the animals.
Right.
And a lot of people go vegan for personal reasons, for health reasons. I went vegan for the animals because of what happens to them in factory farms and things like that.
And how did you get in contact with you are involved with so many organizations, and you have been speaking to many different schools. What have that experience been like for you as a vegan activist, for people to hear your story, hear your voice?
It's been a great experience because I talk to a multitude of different people from different backgrounds, different ages, about all important issue. It's been nothing but love. It's been nothing but, for me, I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to talk to people about this, because it is a all-important issue. A lot of people don't see it like that. They see animals as commodified beings, like they have a purpose, like this is what they're here for. They're here to make food out of. They're here to make our clothes, and they're here for entertainment. Well, that's not necessarily their purpose. Being vegan and being an activist for me is part of a larger part of collective liberation, the liberation of human beings, the liberation of people of different genders and sexual orientations, our culture, race, ethnicity, a lot of things that are under attack here in this country and globally. And animals are a part of that because when you start to understand the intersections between our health, environmental racism, and animal rights, it all intertwines.
Right.
So for me, that's a really big issue.
And how has the response been based on the amount of times you have said, speak your mind on vegan and cruelty against animals and animal rights?
It depends on the audience. A lot of people are not receptive to that information. They're not receptive to that message. Because again, they're indoctrinated into this belief that animals are here for us instead of here with us. We share the planet with these animals.
Right.
We don't have the right to necessarily take what belongs to them. And but when I'm talking to children, like when I go to the schools and I'm talking to the kids, they understand that message because they're still young. Their minds are like sponges.
Exactly.
So they're open to this information, whereas adults who are pretty much stuck in their ways, they don't want to hear it.
Right.
A lot of times, not everybody, but most of the time. So it really depends on the audience and who I'm talking to, that whether they take the information or not. So it's give and take most of the time.
Right. And with that being said, what more do you wish could be done to prevent animal cruelty and to ensure that vegan society is still moving forward?
Again, just people approach it with an open heart and an open mind. Start to view animals as beings that have a right to live, just like me and you.
Right.
We're not natural predators. We can live healthy, sustainable lives without harming animals, and that's my whole message.
Yes.
But you have to approach it with an open mind. You have to let go of the selfishness and this belief that animals exist for the purpose of a meal, or the purpose of having nice clothes, or your entertainment, or even for research and study.
Right.
Because that's not why they exist. They exist for other purposes beyond our own benefits. And I would just explain to people to like have an open mind and an open heart when listening to somebody trying to convey this message.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for me specifically as a person of color, because a lot of times you don't hear this message from us.
Exactly.
It's always from a white audience. So for me, it's important that I talk to my community about these issues as well. Also give back, and we donate food in the communities that are underserved, to try to push people in that direction of eating vegan alternatives to like meat, dairy, and eggs, which is ultimately killing our health.
Right.
We're eating these animals and animal products, but they're ultimately hurting us in the long run. So it's like it's so much damage behind the violence towards the animals that the animals are dealing with, and also a detriment to our own health in our community.
Now, aside from spreading your message throughout different communities, you got involved with a few organizations who are associated with you. So why don't you give the people a little bit of details of how you're associated with these organizations and how you feel it benefits the community?
Well, I could start with Voters for Animal Rights, where I serve as a board member. And what we do is we try to create laws that protect animals, to push legislation through city council and through our mayor, and in Albany to protect animals. One of the biggest things we're dealing with right now, the main issue is horse-drawn carriages.
Right.
Right now in Central Park, there are horses that are pulling carriages up and down the streets. Like, these horses deal with a ton of anxiety, a ton of stress. They're in traffic behind cars that are pumping out exhaust into the air. A lot of times, I don't know if you've seen it, but this summer a horse passed out in the middle of Hell's Kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're fighting against this this type of cruelty to animals, because that's what it is. People look at it as entertainment, but it's actually cruelty to animals. So Voters for Animal Rights does everything in their power to push a bill to ban horse carriages and replace them with electric carriages.
Okay.
So that's one of the major things. And another one is organization PETA. A lot of people are familiar with PETA, whether it, they're a very polarizing organization. Depending on who you ask, it's either good or bad. But I think they're doing a lot better because they are trying to understand the plight of other people and what they're dealing with. They are an animal rights organization, but they understand the value of having a person of color like myself go and talk to black and brown kids about eating healthy, about caring about your community and what foods are in your community. And also, because a lot of what I teach is based on the book that I wrote, Liberation Summer, which is a book about a young boy who becomes an activist for his community, for the animals. He becomes a health advocate for his community. And, this is an important message.
Right.
And a lot of times kids don't hear it. And when they do hear it, it comes from people that don't look like them. So a lot of times when you hear a message that doesn't come from people that look like you, it doesn't really resonate. Yeah. Because a lot of times we figure people don't understand our plight. Right. So being that I'm able to go into these schools through them is a major thing.
Right.
So thank you to PETA and of course Voters for Animal Rights for doing all they can to protect animals here in New York City.
Now, you mentioned earlier moments ago about the books that you have written. Mm-hmm. How has the response been based on the books that you have written?
Very well. Amazing. I haven't really wrapped my head around it yet.
Right.
I don't really give myself time to sit back and think about those things. But when I go into the schools and I see their faces light up when I walk in there, it's like, wow, like they know me,
Yeah, exactly.
And they love to hear me talk. They want to hear what I have to say. I talk about my activism. I talk about the book and why I wrote it and what it was inspired by. And, what they can do to protect animals and what they could do to make dietary changes in their life and eat healthier and more plant-based and more sustainable. But it's been a really great experience, and I look forward to the end of this month and the beginning of next month, December, because I have some schools lined up in the Bronx and Queens that I'm going to visit. So I have another opportunity to talk to kids about this all-important issue. So yeah, it's been great, man.
And that includes with the response to they actually like living a vegan lifestyle.
They do. In my experience, kids ask the best questions.
Oh, nice. That is awesome.
Because adults get more defensive in what I'm talking about and the things that I'm trying to convey to them.
Right.
And that's almost like they are very receptive to the information and they want to know more.
Right. So
it's been nothing but great, man. Like it's been a really wonderful experience to go and talk to kids in public schools about this.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And also, you have basically a YouTube channel, so you're not just doing books, you're not just talking in different schools to young children. You also have a YouTube platform. Yeah.
So I started a group called Voice for Change. Voice is an acronym for Vegans of Intersecting Cultural Ethnicities, and the reason I call it that is because I want people to hear this message from people that look like people in your community, aside from just a white. It usually comes from like white voices, but this is a message that resonates with all of us because it impacts animal agriculture impacts all of us, and we're not going to have enough time for this show to get into that.
Yeah.
But vegans of intersecting cultural ethnicities are a collective of black, brown, queer, transgender, disabled activists who don't always necessarily have a platform or a voice in that community. So what I did was I created a lane where they could use their art and convey that message of compassion for animals. I myself, I'm a poet. I have musicians. I have dancers. I have different people with different skills that come together and spread that message. Right. And it's a wonderful thing because it's, you know, people have this perception that vegans or animal rights activists are just angry white people. And, you know, and for the most part, they're right. But there are a sprinkling of black and brown people and people of different sexual orientations, religions, and things like that in the movement. We just don't hear from them enough.
Exactly.
So I created a platform to give them a voice.
Right.
You know, because again, I think that in order to like successfully convey a message to people, you have to, it resonates better when people look like you.
Yeah, exactly.
You understand?
Yeah.
So to me, that was a big thing, and people gravitate to it. They love it. You know, we just did a show October 30th in Washington Square Park.
Right.
And it's been nothing but wonderful, man.
Now, knowing how much you have a strong mindset and a strong activist mindset on being a vegan, do you also have a strong mindset on other issues that affects anything around the world, like, you know, world hunger or like these politician schemers? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, when we talk about hunger, like we have to take care of home first.
Yeah.
And I also work with organizations that like Chili's on Wheels, that provide healthy, vegan, plant-based meals to underserved people in underserved communities.
Right.
I work with people that organize food drives, that organize community fridges, that provide plant-based, healthy foods to their communities. So hunger is a major issue for us, and these people also provide help for people in places like Puerto Rico, and in the Caribbean. You know, that people that have been impacted by hurricanes and natural disasters, they are able to reach these people and go out and provide them food, plant-based, vegan food, through organizing, through getting people together, donating money, donating food, and putting that together.
Right.
As far as other social justice issues, I absolutely am on board for all of it. Because like I said, veganism, being a vegan activist is part of a bigger puzzle of collective liberation. When I talk about collective liberation, I'm talking about the liberation of black people.
Yeah.
You know, the last couple of years we heard a lot about Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And Black lives do matter. And we have to address the issues of our brothers and sisters being gunned down in the streets by police.
Exactly.
We have to address the issues of trans people being murdered in their own community. And the LGBTQ community, you know, something that's shunned upon in our community, which I don't, you know, I have a hard time trying to understand why, you know.
Right.
But there are people out there that have their own plights, and I'm just trying to understand what it is and how I can fit into the mix of all that and create change. Yeah. So a lot of social justice issues are near and dear to my heart, and also you know, you brought up political issues.
Right.
Politicians are not always going to do the things that we want them to do.
Exactly.
It's our duty to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
I think grassroots politics works, or neighborhood politics works if you get involved, like talking to your council members.
Right.
You know, holding them accountable, because ultimately, like, these things that we want to happen have to get pushed up to Albany,
right,
in order for us to facilitate change. So we have to get more involved in our communities, with our city council members, with our state senators, and hold them accountable for things that we want to see in our community change for the better.
Right, yeah, exactly.
You know, we can't all trust politicians.
Exactly.
You know, and a lot of people in politics, because Malcolm X talked about this in the '60s. He said the ballot or the bullet.
Right.
And what he meant by that is we either create change through revolution,
yeah,
or we hold these politicians accountable,
right,
and get involved in our communities. And we have to do more of that.
Exactly. And speaking of doing more of that, and speaking of doing more actions, you spoke about that with politicians, you spoke about that during World Hunger. What more do you expect people to get involved, especially in your position as a vegan activist? What more do you hope to see in changes of vegan society?
As far as veganism, again, I just hope that people approach it with an open mind and realize that this planet, we're only here for a short amount of time.
Right.
You want to live in peace. You want to spread love.
Yes, exactly.
And the way to do that, and also live nonviolent if we can. I mean, that's not always the case, but the way to do that is to just, there's a saying, live and let live.
Right.
That applies to the animals as well. We don't need them for nutrition. I've been vegan 11 years.
Wow.
I'm not protein deficient. That's the myth that, we don't get enough protein. I get more than enough protein. I get more than enough other nutrients that I need to sustain myself through plant foods.
Right.
So we can sustain ourselves without harming other beings.
Right.
I don't have to eat chicken. I don't have to eat pig. I can let them live.
Right.
You understand? Because that was their purpose to begin with, just to live, to procreate and live on this planet like us, because we're not going to be here one day. I want to leave in peace.
Right.
I don't want to leave knowing that I cause unnecessary harm.
Right.
So that, again, that's a big thing for me, and I hope that people, your viewers, your listeners, could understand that as well.
Right.
Try to live more compassionate and more peaceful, and not cause harm when we necessarily don't have to.
Now, would you say that's one of your biggest advices to have people learn?
Yes.
Or do you have more to add to what you just stated?
I mean, there's always more.
Exactly.
There's always more. But we're always learning and growing. This is not information I expect somebody to get overnight.
Exactly.
I don't expect your viewers to listen to this and go vegan tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
But hopefully something that I said today will resonate with them to help them make that change.
Right.
And seek out more information. Like, I might not be the voice you want to hear. There might be other people out there. There's tons of influencers now. Like, we live in this world of social media where we have influencers,
right?
People that you look to for guidance, you look to for inspiration. So
right.
it might come from somewhere else, but just have an open mind when listening to that information, and try to make little changes here and there until you get where you want to go.
Exactly. Now we have a clip for the audience tonight based on Stewart here talking about veganism over at Washington Park. You want to play for a bit? Yeah,
this is from the last event we did at Washington Square Park. This was Voice for Change, the Halloween edition. That explains the mask.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I think I'm doing Death Trade. There's a poem about fur, which is another major issue. If people knew what happens to these animals for the sake of fur coats, hats, things like that, it's heartbreaking. And the poem is just talking about what these animals go through, so people can wear these animals' skin.
Yeah.
So.
Choir, what if your cry for help was silenced and muffled, and fighting for your life became a violent tussle? What if your corpse was tossed in a bloody pile? You cry for these furriers to stop living in denial. That fur coat is not what you wear, it's who you wear. Washington Square Park, my question now is, do you care? You see, the fur trade is the death trade, so don't trade your soul for inhumane customs and traditions of old. The fur trade is the death trade. Fur season. And I want to talk a little bit about fur, animals that are used for fashion items, animals that don't deserve to be used as fashion items, commodified, beat, and tortured. So here goes. The stench of death looms over the gas chamber full of toxic fumes that mercilessly ends a life of doom. Their screams of fear is prevalent in the voice and eyes of their commodified lives, but to you it remains irrelevant. Viewed as nothing more than an expensive accessory for all to adore, while the horrific process from which fur came remains ignored. You wear death proudly on your backs, or perhaps the trim on your hood of those ridiculous-looking hats. Animals skinned alive for their fur hides and it remains tossed to the side. Another beautiful life denied. Animals gripping and biting at a wired cage, spinning in circles with piercing eyes full of fear and rage and wallowing around in their own filth. Yet he who wears their precious fur holds no guilt. This sickening display of humanity has driven these creatures beyond insanity, all in the name of masking your insecurities with blood-stained vanity. Welcome to hell, where animals are violently yanked from cages, to having currents of electrons paralyze them through the anus, and having their coats ripped from their bodies to be left prone and naked, all to be made into the creation for the sake of someone famous. Disregard the barbarity of leg traps for something that's not even a necessity, yet they admire the fur on the backs of heartless celebrities, and there are people that would loudly and proudly defend their choice to wear tortured animal skin. I prefer to call it sin. You call it culture to try to lessen the fact that you add to their total oppression, because what stands between the fox and liberation is undoubtedly a poor taste of a fashion statement. Your disregard and hatred for animals is outright blatant. The blood on your hands are victims that remain faceless, born to suffer so they die nameless while you cover their skin and walk around so blissful and brainless. And I say brainless because if sense is what you have, you'll be able to understand why I'm so goddamn mad. See, to you, the lives of these animals mean nothing at all, except that you get to exploit them at the end of the fall. And that's why I provide the speech for the voiceless, for the ones that fall victim to your self-serving choices. I speak for the mink that viciously had her neck snapped, for mother coyotes caught in the cold grip of a steel leg trap, for defenseless rabbits that have their paws turned into souvenirs, keychains, and lucky charms. That shit is disgustingly wrong. This year, you better find an ethical alternative to stay warm, for as long as you order the death of these animals, I can never stay. How would you like to have your life rewired? What if it was your skin that was torn from your body until it burned like fire and refashioned for another person to acquire? What if your cries for help was silenced and muffled, and fighting for your life became a violent tussle? What if your corpse was tossed in a bloody pile? You cry for these furriers to stop living in denial. That fur coat is not what you wear, it's who you wear. Washington Square Park, my question now is, do you care? You see, the fur trade is the death trade, so don't trade your soul for inhumane customs and traditions of old. The fur trade is the death trade. Fur season.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Like, what's next for you?
First of all, rest in peace, MF Doom. I don't know if people got that. I was dressed as MF Doom for Halloween.
Yeah.
If there's anything else I wanted to add, I think I pretty much said it all. Just try to live in peace, live compassionate lives, and have consideration for those beyond yourself.
Right.
And that includes the animals, you know? And that's really it.
And to continue spreading your message, where can people follow you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm at vigilante_vegan. Again, my YouTube channel is Poetry is Activism. And I also have a Voice for Change Instagram page. I started a page for the poets. It's Voice for Change, v.o.i.e.c. change.
Yeah.
But that's primarily where you can find me.
Right. Well, thank you